Okay, here we go. So the very first thing that we are going to do is learn how to input an equation and then input its derivative into the graphing portion of our calculator. Everything I show you right now is going to work for the graphing portion. Can also be done in the main screen for the TIs. So I'll just show you this and you should be able to figure things out. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this equation that's up here that I hand wrote. I have f of x is equal to x to the third minus 1. That's going to be my equation. I'm going to start off with this equation because I know what its derivative is. I can figure that out manually. I can do that by hand. So I'm going to type in x to the third minus 1 for my y1. Now what I'm also going to do is that's going to be my first equation. That's my first line that I'm going to graph is x to the third minus 1. The second graph that I want to graph is the derivative of it. So to get to that, I'm going to press math, which is right underneath the alpha key. Underneath the math, the number 8. I can either scroll down until I get to n deriv, but I can press 8 and it will bring up a derivative key. Now if you have the old TI 83 or 84, it will not look like what you see up here. But if you have the TI 84 Plus and you bought it within probably the last 2 to 3 years, you will have software that looks where it's going to ask you d over d what? I want it in terms of x. And here's where you can actually type in your whole equation. I can type in x to the third minus 1. But I'm not going to because that's too much work. Instead, I've already typed in x to the third minus 1. And trust me, later on when you start inputting some of these equations, you're only going to want to do it one time. So here's what I recommend you do. Instead of taking the derivative and putting in this equation, I think we should take the derivative of y1. The easiest way to do that on all TI calculators is to use this vars key, otherwise known as variables. Vars. What kind of vars do you want to use? It's asking me. I'm going to use the y variables. So instead of being here, I'm going to go over there and press y variables. Are they functions? Are they parametric, polar? They're a function variable. So I'm going to press number 1 and press enter. Which one do I want to use? And you should know y1. So when I look at this, I have my original function in y1, and now I'm going to take the derivative of y1, whatever y1 is. That makes life so much easier for us. I'm going to press right, and I'm going to take the derivative of x. What do I want to find when x is what? That's what it's asking me. Because I want to graph what the derivative looks like, I'm going to put x for the all x values. I'm going to put x right there. Enter, and I'm going to graph. This looks a little bit funny because my window is not set. If I actually click on window right here, what my window tells me is that I have x values. I'm starting at -10 for the left side of my window. I'm starting at 90 for the right side of my window. I'm scaling, I'm going 1 unit at a time. My minimum y value is -10. My y maximum is 3,600. This is kind of like all over the map. So if ever I want to see what my window is or adjust it, this is where you would do that. If I just want to go to something that's, what's the normal one, Mr. Paramo? I would go under zoom, and I would use the standard zoom key number 6. That window is basically from -10 to +10 for the x-axis, and the same thing for the y. The y is -10. The minimum and the positive is 10 that way as well. So what you see here, the first equation that graphed was y1. This line here is x to the third minus 1. Remember, x to the third was a memory graph, shifted down 1. The derivative, what's the derivative of this? 3x squared. Does that make a parabola? Yes. So this is graphing the derivative as a function and my equation as well. Does that make sense to you? So there's a couple things I can do here. I'm going to actually calculate a couple things. Second, calculate. Sometimes you're going to calculate what's the value when. What's the value when x is 1? Yeah, let's do that. The value when x is 1 into this equation, into the y1, the y value is 0. Okay, I'm just calculated that. I'm going to press up. If I want to know what the derivative is when x is 1, it calculates that for me as well. If the derivative was 3x squared and you plug in 1, you would get 3 times 1 squared and get actually 3. So this is close within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundred thousandths or something like that. 6 decimal places basically. You're really, really close to what this is because it uses a different, it approximates it. It's not bad. So it's good enough. It's close enough for us, especially if we do 4 sig figs. So today, on these calculators, you're going to be asked to input equations. You're going to be asked to sketch the original graph and the function. Those are not super, super important to get exactly right because they're just a sketch. You're supposed to find a value of the of 3 into this function. You're supposed to find the derivative and plug 3 into that function. And this is how you do it. You basically press second, calculate, figure out that value just like we just did. You can figure out what the value is into the first equation, and if I press up, I can find the value into its derivative just as easily. If I want to find where the equation is equal to 0, all we do is calculate the 0 instead of the value, number 2. And so if I want to find a 0, we have to have a left bound and a right bound and guess where the 0 is. The 0 is at x is equal to 1. By the way, if I chose a left bound that was here, here's my cursor, it's on this graph. And this is for the first function. If I want to find the 0 of the second function, I would just press up. And now I'm going to find the derivative, where the derivative is equal to 0. Where's the left bound? The lower bound. If I chose here and here, and I click guess, I'm trying to find the 0 right there. It says error, no sign change. What it's looking for is, it's looking to see, did it go from a positive to a negative? And if it does, it's going to try to figure out how close it has to be to get that point. And it'll go within however many places your calculator is set to. With that being said, your calculator can only find, derivatives within the window. So when I look at this, this is from negative 10 to positive 10 x values. If I ask you, like on number 3, if I ask you how to find, or if I want to find the derivative at x equals 85, I would not be able to find the value at 85. Let me show you what I mean. Let's calculate the value of 85. It says invalid. How come? Because it's not in this window. I can't figure it out unless I adjust my window. And so how would I do that? I would go to the window settings, and I need a maximum. If I wanted 85, I'd have to have like 90 here or 86, so that it's in between somewhere. Then it'd be able to figure it out. Let me see. Anything else I need to mention for this calculator? Make sure you're in radians if you have a sine. Let's see. Okay, that's it for the TI-84. Here's the TI-83. It looks very, very similar. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Biggest difference here, x to the third minus 1. I'm doing the n derivative, same vars. Remember how I got to y1 here? I have to actually put commas. And I have to put a comma and an x and another comma and another x with the end of the parentheses there. If I don't have two of these x's, it's not going to work. That's how it works for the TI-83. I want to say this is the same for the TI-89. It's the same way. But it is not the same for the Casio people. I could go to graph, and then everything else is pretty much the same as the TI-84. Which then brings up the Casio people. How many Casio people are in here? Okay, there's about 5 of you. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to go under graph. I'm going to delete a couple of these things. And what did we have? X to the third minus 1. That's my y1. I want to do the same idea. I want to take the derivative. So under the derivative, I'm going to press options right next to the shift key, O-P-T-N. Here's option key. And the option key brings up a menu. Down here at the bottom, I'm going to press calculate. What do I want to calculate? D dx. With d over dx, I want the derivative of with respect to x. Since this already has the x involved, all I have to do now is, remember, I don't want to re-enter this whole thing, so I want to use my variables here. I'm going to press vars. It's right next to the option key, by the way. Here's vars right there. And I'm going to press, I want to go for a graph. And this is the only time I press this Y key right here. I'm going to press Y. Which Y am I going to use? I'm using Y1, comma, and I'm going to use alpha X in order to punch it in. I'm going to use this red X that's right above the plus sign. So it looks like this on my calculators. Alpha symbol, X, end of parenthesis. There are only one X involved. I know the directions here say 3 things, but really it's just the function and then comma and then just an X there. And that's how you will be able to draw this. Oh no, and see my window's all messed up here. I'll need to adjust my window. The best way to adjust your window on these is to press window, V window. Still thinking, that's what this little thing means right there. Once this thing goes away, then I can actually work a little bit. Shift V window. Here's my window settings. I can go under the standard, trig, initial. I'm going to do, here's standard. Resets it to the 10, negative 10, positive 10, just like our TIs. Graphs the first function. Then it's going to graph the derivative. It's figuring out the derivative right now. And it takes a lot longer to actually process this, believe it or not. In order to do calculations on the Casio, you actually are going to go under G-solve, which is right here above the F5 key. Shift G-solve. It brings up another menu. You could find your roots. This is where it's equal to 0. Hi, Maribel. Thank you. I'm going to press this right arrow key, and I'm going to do a Y calibration or a Y calculate. I think that's what it stands for. I'm not positive. But we're going to calculate a Y value. Let's say I wanted to find out what happens when X was 3. I would actually plug in, right here's where you choose. You're doing a Y calculation for which equation? Do I want it for the original function? If I press up, I can choose the derivative. So if I want to know when a derivative is, I have to choose it here. And I can choose when X is 3, figure out what the derivative is when X is 3 for this calculator. And look at how long it takes the Casio. It will take a while because it's tracing. There it goes. Finally, it gets to X is 3, and it tells me that it's 27. Okay, so be more patient with the Casios than the TIs, and we'll go from there. What else do I need to tell you on the Casios? Casios, when you are punching in equations, Casio people, when you're punching in sine of X over 3 and it's supposed to be sine squared, the way you people need to punch it in will be like this. You take this square, put this whole thing in parentheses, and then square it. TI people, you can go sine of X over 3 squared, and it will interpret it like this. It will interpret it like what's above. But you can actually write it like this. Casio people, you cannot do that. So I'm going to put Casio right here. And TI people right there. What we are going to do for the remainder of the period.
What about 89?
Okay, so who has an 89 I may borrow? Here's an 89. Let's see what we can figure out. I've never done this before on a TI-89, but let's just keep going. If I'm punching in, I'm just going to clear it out. And remember what I was doing, X to the third minus 1. Now I want to do the derivative of that. What did I do? Press math?
No, the blue.
The second, and then there's a little D.
Okay. The derivative of, where's my variables?
They're just on there. They're
Above
white.
like the
Above the
plus
numbers.
sign or something.
Here's X.
Below the green thing.
No.
The numbers?
The
No,
variables
right.
like X, Y, and Z right there.
Right.
No, but he's talking
I guess I could do y1, but I don't know if that's going to
above the
work.
minus sign. Second. But I don't know how we find it.
Let's get out of that one.
What do you want to say?
I wanted to say y1. And I think I can actually type in y1. I don't know though. We'll see. Comma, x, parenthesis, enter. Let's see if that works. I don't know. We'll find out. So does mine. Remember, I've never done this before, and so I'm just trying something new.
Grab the parabola first?
No, I'd never. They figured it out by that time.
Somebody doesn't wanna do it.
So let's.
Can I see what you did?
Oh, let's do this. Let's edit. Okay, let's try another one. Oh, that looks better. Let's try that.
What'd you type in? Y1? Y1.
Y1 comma.
So I treated it like it was the Casio. Enter, go to. I don't know what that means.
Oh, you just have to find it, so put in an equation.
I have to.
It says argument error when you graph it.
What if we just try plugging in an equation?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. I'm thinking it has everything to do with that. X to the third minus 1,
But then it says argument.
comma, x.
No, that one worked. That one worked. I did that.
Yeah, it's not liking my Y1 that way. So that's the same issue I had with the TI-83. So we'll play around with it. We'll figure out how to get Y1 in there the easiest way. But I basically had to type in the derivative and then retype my whole equation. But there's a way to get around this. You TI-89 people will need to figure out how you can input in a Y1 in there somehow. For me, it was under variables, and everything else for the TI people, your stuff is going to be under this F5 math button. Under F5, you can find a value or a 0 right there. That's what you're looking for. That's how you are going to do most of these problems as well. For example, if I wanted to find the value just like before, where I wanted to know when it was 3, for my first equation, that's what this number 1 up here means. When I plug in 3 into the first equation, we get 26. When I press down, when I plug in 3 into the second equation, which is the derivative, you get 27. So it's just a new way for you to practice. I'm going to stop right there.